Over the past few years, whenever the topic of the Iranian-Israeli or the Iranian-American conflict comes up, you'll always find that one person in the group who says, "Oh come on, guys, it's all a play. They're just acting. All these strikes, they're pre-arranged behind closed doors." Now, even though that's a pretty shallow way of looking at it, that theory was actually convincing to a lot of people for a long time. But, slowly, the picture started to change. This recent war proved the conflict is very real. Iran has taken massive hits. At the time of this recording, over 80,000 civilian targets have been struck on Iranian soil, including more than 60,000 residential units. And of course, Israel has been pounded as well, despite the heavy media blackout they use to project this image of being untouchable. So, the idea that this is just theater, that's dead and buried. This brings us to the real question. Why do they actually hate each other this much? Why does Iran despise America and Israel with such a passion? Welcome to Curious at Midnight. Before we dive in, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our latest deep dives. To understand the roots of this story, we have to go back in time and look at the Iranian government before the 1979 revolution. In the early 20th century, Iran was ruled by the Pahlavi dynasty, founded by Reza Shah Pahlavi in the 1920s. Reza Shah was a military officer who decided to take control of the country and start a massive Western-style modernization campaign. He was heavily influenced by what Ataturk was doing in Turkey. But, when World War II kicked off, it looked like Reza Shah was leaning toward the Germans. This prompted Britain and the Soviet Union to intervene militarily, forcing him to abdicate the throne to his young son, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, in 1941. Mohammad Reza took over as a young man with very little political experience. On paper, Iran was a constitutional monarchy. The Shah was there, but you also had a parliament and a prime minister running the day-to-day business. By the 1950s, the Iranian streets were absolutely boiling. People felt their national wealth was being stolen, and that the Shah was nothing more than a puppet for the West. The biggest issue? Oil. Britain completely controlled the Iranian oil industry through the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, which, by the way, is the direct ancestor of today's BP. The British were basically siphoning Iranian oil while the Iranians themselves saw almost zero benefit. Then, a figure emerged who changed everything: Mohammad Mossadegh. Mossadegh was a veteran politician with massive grassroots support. He was elected prime minister in 1951, and the moment he took office, he made a historic decision that shook the world. He nationalized Iranian oil. The Iranian people hailed him as a national hero. But to Britain, this was a declaration of war. The British couldn't topple Mossadegh's government on their own, even with an economic blockade. So, they turned to the big boss, America. Britain convinced the US government that Mossadegh might ally with the Soviet Union, bringing Iran into the communist camp. This led President Eisenhower to greenlight a secret CIA operation. Just like that, the CIA organized a coup against Mossadegh. They paid off gangs, rioters, and journalists to create chaos in the streets. They staged fake protests and spread fake news. To top it off, they bought the loyalty of certain army generals, who rolled tanks into Tehran, surrounded Mossadegh's house, and arrested him. He was imprisoned and later exiled. The Shah, who had actually fled during the chaos, was flown back to Iran on an American plane. From that moment on, America took center stage, the British influence faded, and the US began supporting the Shah with absolute power. After the coup, the Shah wasn't just a figurehead anymore. He started crushing all opposition with an iron fist. He established a secret police force called the SAVAK, with training and help from the CIA and the Israeli Mossad. The SAVAK's main job was to eliminate anyone who disagreed with the regime, whether they were leftists, nationalists, or religious figures. Torture, random arrests, and forced disappearances became part of daily life. This foreign intervention and internal oppression created a massive amount of resentment, until we hit 1979. That's when the Islamic Revolution happened, led by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. And keep in mind, Khomeini is not the same as Khamenei, who was assassinated recently. A few months after the revolution succeeded, the Shah fled Iran. He was very ill and asked for medical treatment in the US. When President Jimmy Carter agreed to let him in, it hit the Iranian public like a lightning bolt. They were terrified that America was hosting the Shah to plan another coup and put him back on the throne. In November 1979, a group of Iranian students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. They took 52 Americans hostage and demanded that the Shah be returned to Iran for trial. Those hostages were held for over 400 days. America tried to solve the crisis militarily with a secret rescue mission called Operation Eagle Claw. It was one of the most embarrassing failures in U.S. military history. The troops landed in the Iranian desert hundreds of miles from Tehran, but sandstorms caused helicopters to crash into each other. They had to retreat, leaving America looking completely helpless. This failure, by the way, is exactly why the American public is so terrified of a ground invasion today, even when the Orange Man goes on TV every day saying, "We're going to invade." Iran knows America can't handle that kind of war. Eventually, the crisis was settled through Algerian mediation. America unfroze billions in Iranian assets, and the hostages went home. As for the Shah, America basically threw him under the bus once he became a political liability. He eventually died and was buried in Egypt. The memory of all this, the coup, the SAVAK, the intervention, is burned into the Iranian consciousness. It created a historical hatred toward the US and its regional ally, Israel. This became the foundation of Khomeini's legitimacy. He branded America as the Great Satan and Israel as the Little Satan, symbols of Western control trying to loot their resources. He cut all ties and even handed the Israeli embassy building in Tehran over to Yasser Arafat and the PLO. For the Iranian regime, hating the West isn't just a policy, it's their reason for existing. Then there's the struggle for influence. Iran wants to be the regional superpower. They built a massive, complex network of allies. During the Israeli invasion of Lebanon in the 80s, Iran sent Revolutionary Guard officers to help, which led to the birth of Hezbollah, their strongest ally today. In Iraq, they supported militias after the 2003 US invasion. In Yemen, they backed the Houthis. In Palestine, they supported groups like Hamas. This isn't just about religion, it's about the game of politics. This network allows Iran to pressure the US and Israel on multiple fronts at the same time, without ever having to fight a direct war on Iranian soil. On the other hand, Iran has always had nuclear ambitions. And Israel? They are terrified of that. Honestly, Israel doesn't even want America to have nuclear weapons. They want to be the only ones with power in the region. Since the late 90s, intelligence reports have shown Iran building secret uranium enrichment facilities. For the past few decades, Israel's primary goal has been to stop this at any cost. Netanyahu has spent 30 years telling the US that Iran is 2 weeks away from a bomb. He's been saying the same thing for 3 decades. Eventually, the US listened. They struck 3 nuclear sites inside Iran: Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. They used 14 bunker-buster bombs, GBU-57s. This happened during the 12-day war back in 25. The US and Israel celebrated, saying they destroyed the program, but then came the reality check. New intel suggests those strikes were mostly for show. They didn't actually end the project. The IAEA reported that Iran started covering the entrances to the Isfahan center with mounds of dirt to protect it from airstrikes and placed shielding over Natanz to hide the work happening underground. Iran was hit, but they're still standing. In fact, they've since increased their stockpile of ballistic missiles and drones. Now, the US and Israel have reached their limit. They believe the only solution is regime change, to get rid of the headache forever. And they think now is the perfect time. Why? Because over the last 2 years, they've clipped Iran's wings. Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Hamas are at their weakest points. The Iranian regime is exposed. Plus, Israel currently has Trump in their corner. To them, he's the greatest win in history. He's impulsive, he doesn't overthink plans, and he's willing to make massive decisions without caring what the rest of the planet thinks. This is Netanyahu's dream moment, to execute a plan he's had for 30 years. And America sees a benefit too. They satisfy the lobby at home, and they choke off China, since Iran is basically China's biggest gas station and mineral source. And that's the story. Who made it to the end? If you're still here, you're the best. Give us a like before you go so we know how many of you stayed until the finish line. And if you have any questions that keep you up at night, drop them in the comments and we'll answer them. Peace.